On Kits and Cruising this week, Beverly French looks at a car with history, the Auto Tune Gemini, and Richard Hammond looks at the gorgeous Phantom GTR.
Some cars just refuse to die. The Mini, for example, or the Porsche 911. The Auto Tune Gemini. OK, here we come clean. Although Auto Tune have been in the kit business since the early 80s, it's the Gemini Shell which is the real oldie here. For way back in the 60s, this shape was created by Elva, and back then they used a mixture of Austin 7 and Ford 10 parts to frighten MGBs on the racetrack. One year, the only British finishers at Le Mans were Austin Healey Sprites wearing these Elva shells. But hey, aren't we always harping on about how the kit industry's moved on in the last 10 years? So how can a 40-year-old compete in the modern arena? Well, for a start, Auto Tune treated the car to a new space frame chassis using running gear from the old rear drive Escorts. There are options such as independent rear suspension for those in search of extra sophistication though. Out on the road, the Gemini definitely reminds you of the sports cars of the 60s. Now, the ride is harder than production cars of today, but it still doesn't rattle your fillings loose. So on that note, I think I'll take it for a spin. The company are currently working on a bigger Sierra-based Gemini, which will hit the market next year. That car promises to be a little less aggressive than the current car, more like the modern production cars we mentioned earlier. This car will eliminate one of the few downsides to the current model. The fact that people are now bringing their latest Ford engines and putting them in the car gives it that personal touch. Engine options start at the old Escorts Crossflow and Pinto engine, but the company can engineer it to take most 4-cylinder lumps, and the Nutty Brigade can even go for a Ford V6 or a Rover V8 version. The Gemini offers an alternative to kits such as the Fisher Fury. We'd hazard a guess that the Fisher would be the easier build. Developed though it is, this shell is still an old design and there are plenty of Fishers out there, so if you want something a bit different, this could be the car for you. Prices. No, they're not sky high. You can actually get one of these on the road for about £5,000. You also get the option of a removable hardtop as well as the traditional hood, should practicality be a problem. It all comes down to personal taste, and the Gemini is certainly a lot of fun. Most people's final decision will be reached over which shape they prefer, and that's up to you.
People often ask me what I do for kicks. After all, I race cars at weekends. I like to hone my reactions with toys. As they say, the difference between the men and the boys is the size of their toys.
Well, actually, I'm not flying this helicopter. It's actually Mark Tilbury over there from Model World that's flying this helicopter. I can, but it's a bit too windy today. Every time it's windy, I crash. And it's Mark Tilbury from Model World who I spend all the money with. His vast fortune he has given me back. in a small degree, by buying off me the Caterham I built for my wife. This is a Caterham scholarship car, and my wife competed in 1 year of the Caterham Scholarship Championship with it, me being team manager, team owner and mechanic, and it was great fun. I enjoyed building the car, I enjoyed maintaining the car, I enjoyed repairing the car, but it hasn't actually been damaged very, very much, Mark, honestly it hasn't. But let's see how it goes on the road. I think the difference between this Caterham and my Vauxhall engine car, this has got the pushrod 1600cc engine, and it makes it much more docile for everyday motoring. It's a lot more economical as far as fuel's concerned. It's a cheaper car, but it's still as much fun. You can have a lot of fun knowing that you're actually probably doing near on 40 miles to the gallon. So what you have is a highly developed, very sophisticated suspension system that is only really appreciated when you take the car to the limit and beyond. The car will understeer initially on the way into the corner if you want it to. It can oversteer slightly on the way out of a corner if you want it to. The balance is so fine that a slight lift off mid-corner or accelerate mid-corner can change the whole balance of the car, and really mid-corner you steer the car on the throttle. Well, here we are again, back with Mark. Mark, you're the proud owner of a very nice Caterham. You've had it for 2 years, ex-Patrick Watt's car. What do you think? Are you happy with it?
It's an absolutely superb car, mechanically sound, very well built, drives superbly. Can't wait to get up in the morning, if the sun's shining, jump in the car, get out, give it a good thrashing.
Well built, I think, is the word there. I introduced you to Caterhams by letting you have a go in the car initially at Brands Hatch, thrashing it round on a track day.
That's right.
What do you think of track days?
Yeah, well, the on-track days are absolutely superb. You can take the car right to the limit on a variety of British tracks such as Brands Hatch, Thruxton, Snetterton, and it really is good, right to the edge in perfect safety, really.
And into the gravel, I know the answer to this one, but into the gravel occasionally,
yeah,
maybe?
You can end up in the gravel when you're pushing the car to the limit, but again, the gravel traps are there as a safety measure, and it's no danger to yourself or to any others on the track, which is great.
I think the point is that Caterham is really a race car for the road. It's a very good road car, but it's a fantastic race car, and really, unless you actually take it on a racetrack, you just don't realise how incredible the car is. I've still got a Caterham. And this is it. Looking a bit tatty at the moment, unfortunately. It's just come back from Paul Ricard doing a 4-hour race there. Other events I did in it last year were Spa. I did a 2-hour race at Spa in the pouring rain. Events my wife did in it, shopping in Tunbridge Wells, shopping at Lakeside. And between these various events, all we do is change the tyres, spring settings, and it turns it from the ultimate race car to the ultimate road car. It's actually quicker round a lot of race circuits than an actual touring car. On the road, it's absolutely unbelievable. As I said earlier, boys and their toys, you just want to get in and have a play.
Coming up after the break, Virginia Baker dishes the dirt with the Scamp Owners Club.
At
At last we get to grips with the gorgeous Phantom GTR, and before we climb in and take a drive, you have to take a step back and just soak in that beautiful shape. Anybody that this car has been near does exactly that. First up then, nobody's going to accuse it of being subtle. It isn't. It's a pretty wild looking machine, but take a closer look and you can certainly say that it's restrained. The pen that actually formed this masterful shape did exercise a little restraint. There's no big fins and spoilers sticking out to spoil these absolutely beautiful, elegant lines. And we get to the rear of the car, and under here is where we find nestling the Honda designed V6 2.7 litre engine taken out of the old Rover 800s. So it's a pretty neat installation for all the oily bits at the back, and then we get to the front, and it's here at the kind of user-friendly bit that many a specialist car starts to fall down. Well, it bodes well, because immediately we've got a beautiful setup just for opening the door, and it works beautifully too. Then we climb inside, take a look and see what we get. And immediately we can see that they've taken the very sensible step of keeping things as simple and uncomplicated as possible in here. And that's enabled the designers to achieve a very, very high standard of finish. You could be climbing into pretty much any supercar here. If we take a look around, the bits and pieces that have been used and those that have been sourced from other cars have been extremely well integrated. There's nothing leaping out at you and shrieking, "I was taken from a very ordinary car." Everything fits very neatly and flushly. We have a very nicely integrated dash here, the dials taken from the Rover, but again, there's nothing really to tell you that. You'll notice as well that this is an automatic version. Now that came as something of a surprise to the manufacturers, but quite a few of the customers asking to have these cars built requested an automatic. But that perhaps has quite a lot to say about the possible future uses for the Phantom, as very much a long-legged supercruiser, which fits in very nicely with its rather suave, elegant and really quite subtle design and image. Norman Morris and the rest of the small Phantom team have spent several years of painstaking development time on the GTR. They've resisted the temptation to capitalise on popular public reaction and rush the car into production prematurely in order to make sure they can take development just as far as possible. And the results? They speak for themselves. We're in the workshop of Norman Morris. The man behind this man has driven it on for nearly 8 years. Norman, 8 years ago, wow, you sat down and got involved in this. How?
Yes, well, a colleague of mine had already started the project, and I got involved with him over just saying that I'll do the doors for you. From that moment on, I've done all of the body work, which is difficult for one person to do anyway. So we've been involved in the chassis, the bodywork, heating, ventilating, wipers, everything you can think of in the car from the chassis upwards. And all the time being very meticulous. You worked prior to this as a professional in the motor industry anyway, and you've brought the same kinds of standards to this, haven't you? Oh yes, absolutely. We've been meticulous in everything we've done, and it shows in the car at the moment. The bugbear of many small manufacturers, which I know is how you think of yourselves here and where you're going with this, is that because there isn't the budget for the development work, a lot of the time you have to practice on your customers. You don't want to do that. We're not going to do that, there's no doubt about that. We are going to have this car as perfect as it's likely to be before the customer gets it. Just for you personally, the car is beautiful, you can't deny it. We were taking it around the golf course earlier on, parking it there, and you had to just pull people off the things. How does it make you feel when people react so positively to it? Well, unbelievable really, never having had a poser's car before. This is it's kind of unbelievable that so many people should gather around it wherever you stop. How important is it to you when you sit back and look at the thing? I mean, are you still interested in looking at it? Did you get bored as the novelty worn off after, what, 8 years of staring at it day in, day out? Never, no. It's truly a magnificent vehicle, and I believe it's one of the most magnificent vehicles ever designed visually. Where's it going to go from here? We are going into production. We're starting production now, and we shall be selling the car as a fully finished vehicle, and if anybody's keen enough, we'll sell them the component parts if they want to build it themselves. Ultimate goal with it? Eventually we shall crash test the car so that we go into full production as a production vehicle. As I talk to you, you may pick up a bit of a buzz. That's caused by the engine in this that is actually a show car, so we're certainly not yet at the production stage.
Nevertheless, first impression is it feels very, very solid. There's none of the kind of slackness that you would expect to feel in a car. It feels absolutely bolted together. The 2.7 litre V6 is a pretty lusty unit out the back, and it may not be the loudest, most raucous noise, but it is quite a pleasant sound behind your head. There's enough thrust provided. Perhaps not the time to thrash this car too heavily. It isn't a production version. Nevertheless, it does feel like there's going to be more than enough performance, and I don't doubt that if you really want to work on it, there are things you can do to add that little more oomph. The ride is really very good. There's none of the bone-shaking jarring that, again, its external appearance might lead you to suspect. It doesn't feel like a taut race car in terms of jarring ride. It soaks it up quite nicely, which lends it very much towards being used as a long-distance cruiser. I could see this car being ideal for jaunting off across Europe. We've heard the phrase supercar, invented probably in the 70s for the Lamborghinis and Ferraris of the time. Well, we'd like to coin another phrase, the super kit, and it starts here with the Phantom. Because there's no more excuses are needed. This car can stand up alongside some of the most exotic machinery available anywhere from anyone and hold its own very well indeed, thank you.
Now, those of you who think the kit car industry is all about cheap sports cars, then think again, because you could be missing out on quite a bit of fun. Because from family saloons to motor caravans, if you want it, they've got it. Now, I've been invited here to Iron Bridge to meet the Scamp company, but they said something about bringing some wellies, and I don't know why. This is the 30th year of the Scamp Motor Company, and to celebrate, the gang are getting together as many scamps as possible for a wild weekend in August. Now, this is Andrew McLean, whose company manufactures the Scamp. Andrew, thank you for joining us on Kits and Cruising.
Thank you, Virginia.
Now, the Scamp has been around for quite a few years, hasn't it?
30 years this August.
That
Celebrating
long?
its 30th birthday. Yeah, it was originated by a chap called Robert Mandry, who realised that the Mini Moke had left these shores and gone to Australia, and he wanted something similar. So he started with a Mini and used both front and rear subframes and joined them together with tubes of steel and developed the Scamp. And
Now,
that
how
was the
did
Scamp
you-
Mark 1.
Scamp Mark 1. How did you get involved?
Well, I bought my first one 20 years ago when I was a student, and I built it up in my summer holidays. I was an engineering student. It took me 6 weeks to put it together, and I had it ready for the time I was going back to college.
Were all the students very impressed with you?
Yeah, it was the best car I've ever had. Yeah, it's brilliant.
How easy is it to put a car like this together?
Well, if I could do it with very limited mechanical knowledge, although I was doing a degree in engineering, just basic tools, basic knowledge, yeah. Drill, a pop rigger gun.
Now, I believe this car is based on, let me get this, the Suzuki Jeep.
Yeah, the SJ410.
How does that work?
Basically, early Suzukis rotted like anything, and it's basically a body swap. So this is all galvanised and aluminium bodywork, so it should last an awful long time.
So if it's based on a Suzuki, and I know you have one that's based on a Mini as well,
That's right.
does that mean that all the interior and all the engine and everything just comes out from the original car?
The Mini is a subframe swap. So in the Mini, everything in the subframe stays in there, and it's all swapped in its entirety. So all the running gear from the Mini's used, and the seats and the wiring and the lights.
So
Whereas-
you being an engineer, it must be quite easy for you to put it all together.
It's easy for me to put them together, yeah. I've built quite a few over the years, yes.
How easy would it be for someone like me who knows nothing about kit cars to put something together like this?
My sister actually worked for me for a while, and we built her car, and she's still driving it around. She's had that now 10 years. But she actually, with a little bit of help from me, put her own car together.
Really? So you can actually have one of these as a family car, really?
Oh yes. The other cars that have come along today, they're family cars. Yeah, this is my day-to-day runabout.
Really? So you could pile all the kids in the back and
Yeah.
go off somewhere?
Yeah, certainly can do.
Well, that sounds good. Now, your company, I believe, is doing quite well at the moment. Who are your sort of typical customers?
Oh, all walks of life. I couldn't typify a typical customer. They come from everywhere. Any age, from youngsters wanting to build their first car before they can drive, to retired people that just
Really?
want a project to do, an interesting project. There's been about 3,500 of them made.
Really? I think I'm missing out somewhere actually. Now this is a budget built car, isn't it? So what does that mean?
It can be put on the road for less than £2,000 for the Mini-based one, and the Suzuki-based one about £2,500.
So it's a lot cheaper than buying a normal family saloon car.
And a lot more fun.
A lot more fun. Viewers, I think you're missing out. Get yourself £2,000 and you too could have one of these saloon cars. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great fun today.
My pleasure.
But it's fun.
This off-roading looks so easy. I don't know what the director was talking about. Oh, so that's how you stop a scamp. Well, with that in mind, I think today went pretty well. I'm sure the company benefited from my expert driving techniques, my left-hand reverse and my driving into puddles. But with all that in mind, I'm sure they'll be having me back for some more expert tips and advice.
Well, that's your lot for now. Next week, Melissa Porter and John Price report from the Billing Show. See you then.